Let's try a little thought experiment. What if money, the very concept of it, was just obsolete? We're going to explore an idea that completely reimagines how society could work from the ground up. It's called a resource-based economy. And trust me, it challenges pretty much everything we take for granted.
So let's just start with that one. Simple question. Seriously, what if you never had to pay for anything ever again? How would that change your day, your life, all the decisions you make? Okay, so picture this. You wake up, you decide you want to play some tennis with a friend. You just walk over to a public station, grab a bike, and head to the court. And the rackets, the balls, they're just there, waiting for you to use them. No membership, no rental fee, nothing.
And when you're done, you're hungry, right? So you hop on a little automated shuttle that takes you to a restaurant, and you have this amazing, high-quality meal. And then you just get up and leave. The bill never comes. I know, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but this is the day-to-day vision in a resource-based economy.
So the system that makes this whole scenario possible is called a resource-based economy, or you'll hear it called an RBE. The idea is to forget about markets and prices and profits. The entire blueprint is designed around just one thing: intelligently managing the planet's resources to meet everybody's needs.
So why would we even think about such a massive change? Well, the whole framework of an RBE argues that our current money-based system is actually the root cause of some of our biggest global problems.
And this quote really gets right to the core of the philosophical difference. The argument from the source material is that our current system is built just to maintain consumption, to keep money moving no matter what. And RBE, on the other hand, starts with a completely different mission. How do we give everyone the best possible life while also preserving the planet?
Proponents of this idea point to something they call structural violence. Now, this isn't about war or fighting. It's about how the system itself is structured in a way that creates harm. They argue that around 20 million deaths every single year can be traced back to causes related to poverty. And they say that's a direct consequence of a world where you have to buy the very things you need to survive.
And then there's the whole argument about inefficiency. It's kind of nuts when you think about it. In the US, for example, the food on our plates travels an average of 1,500 miles to get there. Now, an RBE proponent would say this isn't happening because it's the smartest way to use resources. It's happening because it's the cheapest way in terms of money. And those are two very, very different things.
Okay, so if that's the critique of our current world, what's the proposed solution? How would this new model actually work? Let's get into the blueprint.
So here's the core definition for you. In a resource-based economy, all goods and services are available to everyone without a price tag. No money, no credit, no debt. And here's the kicker. The very idea of owning most things is replaced with a system of universal access.
This chart really lays out the massive shift in thinking. The whole idea is to move from a world built on private ownership to one of universal access, to go from competition to collaboration, and to move from managing scarcity to actually creating abundance, using technology as the main tool instead of money.
You know, a really great way to think about it is like a giant public library. You don't need to own every single book you want to read, right? You just go access one when you need it. Now just imagine applying that same logic to cars, to power tools, to cameras, to almost everything.
Now, for a system like that to actually work, it would depend on a complete rethink of how we design and produce everything in our world, and it would be totally driven by science and technology.
So to make this work, every single product would be designed with a new set of rules. First, they'd be built for maximum durability, built to last, not to break. Second, they'd be adaptable, designed for easy upgrades. Third, they'd be standardized, using common parts. And finally, everything would be designed from the get-go for easy recycling. The goal is a completely circular, totally waste-free system.
So to make that idea of adaptivity a little more real, think about a modular phone. Imagine it's made of different blocks. Your camera gets outdated, you don't throw the whole phone away, you just pop out the old camera module and swap in a new one. Can you imagine the incredible amount of resources that would save?
You know, in a society without money, entire professions that are just built around managing it would simply become obsolete. We're talking about accountants, salespeople, bankers, lawyers. It's not about people losing their jobs in the way we think about it now. It's about the very nature of what we consider work changing fundamentally. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, because it's the biggest question this whole idea brings up. What about us? What about human nature? What about motivation? And what about greed?
Let's just put the question right out there. If there's no paycheck, why would anyone do anything?
Who's going to do the dirty, the difficult, or just the boring jobs? Well, the answer, according to the RBE model, is kind of twofold. First, almost all of that repetitive labor gets handled by automation. And the tasks that are left, the creative stuff, the scientific research, the arts, those are filled by people who volunteer because they find the work meaningful and they actually want to contribute.
And if that idea of a volunteer workforce sounds a little too far-fetched, just consider this. Even today, with so many of us working full-time jobs, millions of people still volunteer their time. The RBE argument is that this natural human desire to contribute would absolutely flourish once you remove the daily struggle just to survive.
This same logic gets applied to negative behaviors like crime. The RBE perspective is that this is a nurture over nature situation. It argues that crime isn't some unchangeable part of who we are, but it's a predictable response to a stressful, unequal environment. So, if you change the environment, you change the behavior.
So as we start to wrap this up, I think it's important to see the resource-based economy not as some kind of perfect utopia, but really just as a different kind of blueprint, one that's based on a completely different set of values.
And ultimately, the biggest difference really comes down to how we measure success. Our current system is obsessed with gross domestic product, which is basically just a measure of how fast money is changing hands. In an RBE, the main metrics for success will be things like the health of our environment and the well-being of the population. It's a totally different definition of what progress even means.
Which leaves us with a final question to think about. The goal here isn't to say that this is definitely the answer. It's to ask ourselves, is the way we live now the only way? Or is there real value in daring to imagine and explore entirely new blueprints for our future?